this time.
This time, right? Yeah, it worked this time. But is it going to work next time? And who's it going to work on? Is it going to work on, is it going to work on this unbelted fighter, or is it going to work on Super Duke?
That's funny that you bring that up, because Duke Michael O'Brien at practice before we all got quarantined, I was fighting his son, and I knew the shot was open, and I was just kind of like throwing this lame-o. He was on his knees, and I was just throwing this lame-o wrap tap on top of his head, because I was being nice, was my thought process. I was like, there it is. I don't want to clean your clock. And he came over and he's like, if you're going to throw the shot. You can pull it at the end so you don't take his head off, but at least give him the decency to throw the shot, because you're going to meet somebody that's not going to take that, and they're going to clean your clock off. And so I could definitely relate to what you're saying, and I'm sure a lot of other people can as well.
Well, that's one of the hard things about fighting somebody, like when you're trying to pull a shot like that, when you're trying to, because there's a lot of, when I go to fighter practice, there's a lot of people that just, can't handle my crown fight. And, I don't need to go out there and just blow everybody's doors off, because they don't learn anything, and it doesn't teach me anything either. But yeah, if you're gonna do that, you at least need to, you need to do the mechanic correctly.
Exactly.
For yourself and for your opponent.
Yep.
And I think, and his point, and I agree with, is you can throw the mechanic all the way right until the point of impact. Yep.
Exactly. And that's exactly what he's getting at. He's like, if you're going to throw it right, at least, so he learns and you learn. So I was like, oh man. You
can execute the mechanic correctly without ripping somebody's head off.
Right.
And that's something I see a lot of, where people are trying to be nice to somebody and they end up doing just shitty mechanics, for the sake of not ripping somebody's head off.
Right.
And I get it, because it's like, yes, I can hit you with this anytime I want to, and I don't want to hurt you doing it. But at the same time, you can execute everything right up until the point of impact. And then you just place it right exactly where it's supposed to be, right at the point of impact. And, there's definitely a point where you gotta know that you're beaten. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you just know when you're bested, and you don't have to rip my head off for me to know that I'm just beaten.
Yeah.
But yeah, you definitely gotta, and again, it's hard to find. It's hard to find that. But he's right. You gotta at least execute the shot correctly.
Absolutely. All right. So with that, do you have anything else to add, or are you good with me opening the floor?
No, you go open the floor to see if anybody's got any questions.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Now, before you all jump up at once to ask him all these questions, try to be common, or give some common courtesy. And if you hear somebody talking, let them talk, because otherwise it'll sound like super jarbled and staticky. So if you have a question and you're on the Zoom page, we're not really looking at the Facebook comments, so I'm not going to switch back and forth between that, because it's distracting and I want to keep my attention on Sean. So if you have questions, go ahead and unmute your mic. And if you want to come on the camera, feel free. And here we go.
No questions. Class dismissed.
Yeah, right.
I don't have any questions. I
know that guy.
I just like to talk about how when you stop counting when you win, it's kind of a big deal. When you have that moment of like some good stuff happen in a list, and somebody asks you, well, how many did you win? I don't know. You have to go ask the people over there running the table. I didn't count. It's kind of a big deal. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, and it's liberating too, isn't it?
Very much so. Yeah. Last week, a couple weekends ago at Defender, first time I ever made it out of pools in a list like that. I have no idea how many I won. I didn't count, and I don't care. I lost to a badass in the semifinals, and I'm happy as hell about it. So. Yeah.
And by the way, everybody, this is my squire that I was telling you about, who had our champion.
0-9. 0-9. Yeah, that's right. We'll just go ahead and put it out for the world to see. It's kind of like falling in the canal on the video earlier.
And yeah, when he went 0-9, it was devastating, right?
Oh yeah, that was a rough day.
Yeah, it was a hard day. And then we just talked about victory conditions, and and again, this is 9 people who can tell you what's wrong with your fight. And now, I mean, that was only 2 years ago, wasn't it?
That was Vigdis's coronation. That was Lachlan and Vigdis's last coronation, like most recent. That was a year.
No, it wasn't. No, it was their first one. No, it wasn't, because I was at that one. It was the one after that. Because it was up in Montana. I didn't go to it. It was one of Timmer's coronations.
Oh, yeah, Timmer's coronation. Yeah.
One of Timmer's many coronations.
Smoke. It was so
yeah,
great.
0-9 in a tournament, and then you have Defender's Tourney where we had 16 people in the list. There were 8 fights in each of the 2 pools, and you come out of your pool, and that's less than 2 years ago. And the biggest difference is victory conditions. It's how you feel about it, right? I mean, it's like you don't care how deep you're going on the list. You don't care whether you come out of a pool. You come out of a pool and this was that Defender's Tourney was a pretty good list. There were some good fights in it, and the format we had was pretty tough. So yeah, coming out of that pool, that was a pretty significant accomplishment. And yeah, you did it without concern for how many victories you had or how many losses you had. You just fight. You just execute what you have. And then, lo and behold, they tell you that you're coming out of the pool. You're like, okay, if you say so. And, and that's part of that training methodology that I was talking about, that slow burn, right? Where, there's nothing. And then all of a sudden you make it out of the pool one time out of a pretty significant list. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be more of that, now that you've come out of the pool like that. I'm not saying that it's going to happen every time, but now that it's happened the one time, it's going to happen more.
Absolutely. So, looks like I'm going to say Lorcan.
Hey, Lorcan.
Hi there.
I know that dude.
Sweet.
Just something I wanted to comment on that I've seen more of here in Glenavon since moving here, and that I've tried to dispel. But I occasionally have fighters say, "Oh, I'm not good enough to fight an attorney yet." I'll hear that a lot more about, "I'm not good enough to fight in Crown yet."
Right.
To me, this is an alien idea that I didn't really hear, coming up. It wasn't really until I moved here that I heard that. And especially having taken your classes and stuff, I've always been like, no, please. Are you authorized? Fight attorneys so you can learn. And, for the most part, what I've found is reframing it has generally been successful. That like most people are open to the encouragement, and they're open to kind of taking that weight off it. Like,
right.
Like no, you don't have to be a good fighter to fight an attorney. You learn how to be a better fighter by fighting an attorney.
Right.
That's mostly been pretty well received. What's been tougher is I'm not good enough to fight in Crown attorney yet. And I don't see this idea really propagating as much among newer fighters here, but it was kind of a widespread notion among people, especially a few years ago. It's just like that if I go out in Crown and I don't put on, a good show, I've somehow lessened Crown.
Right.
I might be embarrassing. It's like, be honorable. How are you going to embarrass anyone if you go out there and you fight honestly?
Right.
And, that's still something where there's a little cultural stuff going on there where people are a little more like bashful about maybe being on that stage or something. But the overall idea of getting people to think in terms of, I go to attorney and I learn from it. I can't say that everybody's taken that idea for this, and made as much of it, or really, but it's an idea that meant a lot for me, and so I really tried to share it. And I feel like I've seen a number of people kind of, make that little switch inside and take those tourney losses, because the newer you are, the more you need them and the more you're going to get from them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Those losses and and make them into something useful instead of that, oh, hell, I lost.
Right. And that goes along with seeking out the best, right? You know, I mean, you can fight somebody in pickups, but fighting somebody in Crown Tournament is a very different fight. You know, there are no greater stakes than we have in Crown Tournament, and everybody that enters Crown Tournament is fighting at or above their normal caliber. Everybody's fighting their best. And you know, when you hear me talk about, you know, using a tournament for evaluation, Crown Tourney is not necessarily the best evaluation that you can get. Right, I can fight somebody in pickups and give them a better evaluation than you can fighting in Crown Tournament. The Crown Tournament is the most consistent evaluation that we have, because you're always fighting against, it's the same playing field all the time. You know, if you're fighting in a baronial defender tourney like we had a couple of weeks ago, that's not Crown Tourney. You know. It can be a prestigious list, but it's still not Crown Tourney. And fighting in Crown Tourney is where you know, from just a training methodology perspective, that is the most consistent, the most regularly scheduled, the evaluation that we have, where it's always the same level of fighting. It's always the same level of evaluation. And, you know, and it can be hard because, you know, people have a hard time fighting in tournament in general because they view tournament as a judgment, right? It is an evaluation, right? This is where we're finding out what's wrong with your fight. But we're doing that objectively. We're doing that from a pure technical perspective of these are the technical things that you were doing wrong in your fight. It's not a character assault. It's not you're a bad person because you went 2 and out. And that's a hard thing for people to get over, because like you said, when you know, there's that thing where I go 2 and out and somehow that's a curse upon your family, right? I mean, that's like you're an embarrassment to your people because you went 2 and out, and it's really it's hard to get people over that notion. You know, one of my favorite stories about going 2 and out in Crown is one of my former squires, His Grace Timmer. I've been working with him for, I don't know, a couple of years. He had been in several crowns under my instruction, and he always went big, right? He would always fight. When we were doing challenge rounds in the first 2 rounds, he would always challenge the highest fighter that was available in the list at that point. And I was king in my first reign, and Timmer was fighting one of our knights and our viscounts. And he was fighting right in front of where I was sitting, and Timmer ended up beating him, and the guy fell over, and Timmer turned and looked at me, and you know, because we hadn't covered victory at this point. This is the first time he'd won a fight in Crown at all. And so guy falls over, and Timmer looks at me and is like, well, now what? I'm like, you salute your opponent and help him up, and you go on to round 3, you know? But, you know, it's victory conditions, you know? And being in Crown Tourney, there's just nothing like it. Nothing like it at all. There's no greater contest. There's no greater evaluation. It is the emotional contest that we have to work through. And you know, from one way that you can kind of approach it too, and letting people know why you should fight Crown Tourney is, you know, this is the closest thing that we have to a voting process, right? If all I have is a flat snap, I'm going to enter Crown, and you need to beat me. If you want to rule me, you need to beat me. And you know, if you go in there and if all I have is a flat snap and you can't stop that, then you don't get to be my king, right? So I mean, that's one way you can kind of look at it, and it's being part of the process. regardless of how good you are, it is the one chance that we have to be part of the process, to be part of it, to make sure that our crowns are contested, make sure that, that we're not just giving it to somebody, that you're going to go out there and you're going to try. So yeah, it can be a hard sell for some people, for sure. But those are some of the things, and I think you're on the right path on how to get people to do that. I know in the last crown, or the crown before, James the Holy had put a lot of effort into getting 40 people into the list, and and that was huge, and and it took some work. It took a lot of work on his part to convince people that no, yes, this is a thing that you can do. This is a thing you can be part of, and to some extent, you should be part of. So yeah, definitely applaud his efforts in that regard as well.
Yeah, it was a fun list, and my squire also had a lot of fun in there. One other observation that I had, occasionally people, and it's normally squires, they'll say, I'm sandbagging in practice, and I have to explain the victory conditions thing. It's like, no, I'm not trying to kill you like this was a tourney, because I'm practicing things. I'm working on stuff. Like, if you want me to give you the best I got, let me know that. If that's what you need to test, like, sure, I'll do that. It's like, I've had a couple guys that were like, that wasn't the same fight. What's up? And like you're holding out on me. It's like, oh no, I'm just working on things. I'm willing to let you hit me if it means I learn something. So
and at the same time, they learn something as well. And yeah, depending on the level of fighter that you're fighting with, some are going to know that that something isn't right. And usually for those people, it should be enough for you to just say, well, I'm working on something. I actually had that with my squire Vigdis about a year ago. She's currently our queen, and apparently will be for the foreseeable future, because they were supposed to step down last week, but coronavirus means may your reign last forever. So I was fighting Vigdis about a year ago, and she threw something at me that was just like the worst flat snap that I had ever seen her throw, and I stopped immediately, and I'm like, what the hell was that? And I'm like, that was just a disaster. What was that? And she said, well, I'm working on something. I'm like, okay, then I will take all the shitty flat snaps you want to throw at me so that you can work on this other thing. And there's definitely some advantage to me not knowing what it is that she's working on, because she needs to know whether or not I'm going to respond as expected, right? But yeah, I'm like, oh, okay, if you're working on something, then yeah, by all means, throw all the crappy flat snaps you want so that we can get to this thing that is more important. And yeah, it's all part of the process.
Right.
Yeah.
Rob, I see that you came on camera. Do you have a question or comment that you'd like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Sean.
Hey, Antonio. How you doing?
I know we've talked about this at when you came here to the East, but I don't know if it's a general thing that a lot of people talk about. How do you change the culture of your local practice when you don't have people of your stature or other people to get them to go to training, evaluation, and sparring? It's always a hard thing here. I mean, we started doing Pell practice in my backyard, but still when we go to practice, it's like, all right, we're going to slug it out, and we're not really working on the things that we're working on beforehand.
Right. It's a question I get a lot. The answer is that it takes you and one other person. If you have two people that understand training methodology, that understand the process, right? The training process, and that it's not, that practice is not just sparring. That practice is where you go to get better at the things you suck at. And if you just have one person, then that is committed to that as well. You take some of your time, take a half hour, maybe an hour of your practice, and do the training, do the drills, do the, you know, the footwork drills and the partner drills that we have. Do whatever you need to do to slow down practice, slow down your fight. And it starts with one other person. And eventually what happens is, you know, as with all things, when you're making a change to things, one of the first things that happens is you are ridiculed, right? You are scoffed at. When you and one other person are off in the corner doing training, and you've got all these people that want to do just fighting, they're going to laugh at you, they're going to ridicule you, they're going to say you don't know what you're doing, and then eventually you start getting better and they don't. And what happens is the mid-range fighters, not the upper end fighters. Well, the upper end fighters understand training methodology anyway, and they're probably going to be part of that. But the mid-range, like maybe upper-ended unbelts, they are going to notice that you are getting better and they're not. And those are the people that are going to say, hey, what's this training thing that they're doing over here? And maybe I can take a half an hour out of my practice to do that. It can be a hard sell. And that's the thing is you don't really sell it, right? Because it'll kind of sell itself. If you've got you and one other person that are committed to it, and then all of a sudden you start getting better, people start noticing that, and it becomes self-evident at some point. You know, just like any other change. First it is ridiculed, then it is Then it is violently contested, and then eventually it is accepted as self-evident, right? And you gotta have faith in the process, and you know you can't really sell it because it sells itself. And the people that want to get better, they're going to see it for what it truly is, and then they'll do it. But it happens a lot. It happens. I mean, it is the one thing again that I'm trying to change is how we're teaching our sport, and it is just remarkable how many fighter practices you see. Of like, it is an overwhelming number of a majority of our practices throughout the society, where it is simply just put on your armor and go out there and fight as much as you can, and you know, take your chances. And it's just a really terrible way of teaching people how to do things. Mm-hmm. And you know, I know we here have in Artemisia, our local practice is a training oriented practice, and it has been for at least 20 years. And the people, you know, we've got entire generations of people in our barony that have no idea that it's not like this everywhere else.
Well, thanks, Sean. I look forward to some more drills. Talk to you soon.
All righty.
Thanks for your question, man. Okay, I hate to cut this short, but we have time for one more question. If you guys, maybe two, and then we're going to cut it off. If you have any further questions, just go ahead and reach out to Sean on his Facebook page. I know he's more than happy to help anyone. Totally. So
totally happy to.
We got David. He's
I had a quick question.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Hi there, Duke. Sean, for a younger fighter, can you talk just a little bit about something we could be doing for like longevity to avoid, rotator cuff tear, stuff like that? Something you wish you could have done early on to maybe avoid a potential injury or something?
Well, as it turns out, I was taught good mechanics from day one. And because I was taught good mechanics from day one, I don't have a lot of the chronic injuries that a lot of other fighters have. Mind you, there's a lot of people that come to our sport from other sports or from other martial arts, and some of their injuries are related to those other activities. But I started doing Pell work in 1982-ish. So 38 years later, knock on wood, I don't have bursitis, I don't have rotator problems, I don't have elbow problems, I don't have wrist problems, and it is just good mechanics. It's something that I'd realized recently, because I started as young as I was and as small as I was, I've never had the body mass to put behind. I've never had the body mass to put behind the weapon, right? I can't put more muscle behind the weapon to make it hit harder. And I've always talked about stick mechanics in general, and I talk about body mechanics, but I didn't realize until just recently that what I'm teaching really is more stick mechanics, less body mechanics. I use my body to get it moving, right? But a lot of my power comes from taking a 2-pound object, getting it traveling a certain amount of speed. I'm literally teaching you how to make the stick do the work instead of using your body to do the work, if that makes sense. If you can make the stick do the work, like I said, 2-pound object traveling at a certain rate of speed, force equals mass times acceleration, all that good stuff, right? Basic physics. I had to have that when I was younger because I didn't have body mass to put behind it. So yeah, I didn't have a lot of those problems, but good Pell work, good stick mechanics, that is absolutely the best way to keep yourself from getting injured. And mind you, something else I was mentioning to somebody recently, one of the keys to my longevity and my success is, again, knock on wood, not that I should hope for such a thing, I have yet to step in a gopher hole and wreck my knee. Right. It's happened. I mean, there's plenty of really great fighters out there who have had freak accidents that ruined them. I have a small ranch here in Utah, and about 3 months ago, I was unloading hay out of the trailer, and I had a 60-pound bale of hay bounce off of my knee, and it hurt. And I thought for just a second that was going to wreck me. I'm like, this is how it ends for me. As it turns out, it was a little bit bruised, and walked it off a bit and let it rest. But there was a moment there where I thought, like, this is how it ends, because like you could have any kind of freak accident like happen to you. I'm very, very lucky that I haven't had any of that stuff happen to me. But barring that, I've always used good mechanics from the very beginning. I use good stick mechanics. The stick mechanics I use are designed to be kind to your body so that you can be doing this for 30, 40, 50 years. So that is absolutely the biggest thing. The rotator is one of the most common injuries in our sport, and that comes from bad mechanics. I've always said that I don't believe in the one true way. There's no one right way to do this. But there are a lot of really bad ways to do this, and one of those is chicken wing and getting your arm out, getting your arm away from your core. Anything you do that encourages lever action at the rotator is going to put stress on that, especially long term, because it's that rotator cuff is probably the one joint that we have that I think is most the easiest to damage. Because it is one of the most delicate joints that we have, and people are using it wrong for our sport, and there is a lot of that. So the stick mechanics that I use are, again, designed very specifically to do that. If you have good mechanics, and if you look at, I was talking to Duke Baldar down in Trimaris years ago, and he's another guy that's been fighting since he was a teenager, and he doesn't have any of these problems either. And it's the same thing. It's good mechanics. It's mechanics that are kind enough to your body to let you do this for as long as you want. So,
thank you.
Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Oh, no problem.
All right, we have time for one more question, and he messaged me on Messenger, and I just got it. Jake Cropper, if you are available, feel free.
Your Highness, I had no idea.
Unmute your mic and ask away, man.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Well, greetings, Your Highness. Everyone, I'd like to introduce you to the Prince of Sinagua.
And the princess is in the background, too.
Hi, Your Highness.
I want to say thank you for coming to my investor. It meant a lot, especially as one of those, the lower to mid-range fighter. There's a lot as that kind of on the cusp. That we have a lot of self-doubt. You talk about passion, you can't train that, you can't drill that into someone. Now, someone who, that passion is at all-time highs during that peak season, yet getting my ass off the couch, unfortunately, sometimes it's hard to go out and hit the Pell and do the drills. Through, your teachings, because we've had several training discussions, motivation comes to us all differently. But I think the biggest part my question actually is, going out and training with people at your level and higher when you're practicing these techniques. Input, I think, is very critical. Now, how do you feel that the mid-range fighter should come and ask for that critique? Should be an upfront discussion? Do you follow what I'm asking?
Yeah. So you understand that certainly with me as a trainer, every fight that I have is an evaluation, right? Every fight that I have is an evaluation. And if it turns out that the person that I'm fighting just lays waste to me and I can't touch them with anything, I'm still doing evaluation. I'm just doing evaluation for somebody else now. I'm doing evaluation for me, right? I do self-evaluation a lot better than most people do. There are very few people in the world who can evaluate my fighting better than I can evaluate my fighting. I know when I'm beaten, and when I get beaten and I get beaten real good, I'm gonna look at the tape. I'm gonna go over it. I'm gonna figure it out, right? I can do that for myself, but I'm always doing evaluation. Not everybody does that, obviously. I'm doing training at a pretty high level compared to most nights. But you straight up ask for it, right? You go to whoever it is that you're fighting and you say, hey, I'd like to do some fights, and if you don't mind, I'd ask you to give me an evaluation when we're done. I had years ago. It was the second time I was king. I was fighting at a foreign war, and I was fighting the king of another kingdom. And when we got done fighting, I said, well, do you see anything I can fix, or do you see anything I can change? What can I do better? And his answer to me was, well, you can start by not hitting me so much. Like, okay, that's not quite what I was looking for, but I guess I'll take it. And sometimes that's the answer, and sometimes, because not everybody's really geared that way exactly. So the best thing you can ask, and that's the best thing you can do, right? You just understand that every fight that you go into is an evaluation. Every time you're doing a pickup somewhere, it's an evaluation. And, you ask ask whoever you're fighting, whether, and honestly, you can ask them up front, especially if you think you're in the mid-range unbelt, right? Because, we don't make any assumptions about where we are in the path, right? But certainly in the unbelted spectrum, if you haven't been knighted yet, then there's, obviously you haven't hit that point where you're expected to do more evaluation, if that makes sense, right? Yeah, it makes sense. So as anywhere in the unbelted spectrum, you can just tell somebody straight up, I'd like to do some fights, and when we're done, I'd like your evaluation of where you think I am. And if you tell them that up front, then they know that they know that that's kind of your expectations. They know that that's sort of their job or their role in that particular set of fights, that you're expecting them to do an evaluation. And it's perfectly fair and perfectly honest for you to say, just throw that out right up front. Say, hey, I want some evaluation when I'm done.
Perfect. If I forget that, sometimes I'll just ask people, hey, what stood out to you? Did anything stand out to you in that fight?
Yeah. Yeah, but if you again, as a anywhere in the unbelted spectrum, if you start with that and you let them know right up front that that's what you're expecting, then that helps them understand that that's what they're supposed to be doing.
It all starts with that willingness to ask.
Yeah, it's weird. I was talking to Tilius about this. I'm like, weird. You got all these people lined up to do interviews, and You're telling me that all you had to do was ask them?
Yep.
And like they said yes?
If you guys only knew the magnitude of other fighters we have on this list coming up, it's literally going to blow your minds who we have lined up for this list. And I'm not going to share it because I love to keep it a surprise. So, but with that, guys, I think we're going to close it up. And yes, Fergus in the chat says the other part is you have to be willing to listen. And that kind of goes back into what Sean said about if you're not going to listen to what I have to share, then I'm not going to continue to share what I have to teach you. And so
it gets old fast.
Yep, exactly. And so with that, guys, we're going to put this at a close for the evening. This will be posted on YouTube here shortly in the next couple of days. Be on the lookout for it if you want to come back to it, take notes to it. It'll probably also be on Facebook too. And tomorrow night we have Duke Floki. He'll be on at the same time, 6:30 Mountain Standard Time, and we'll be doing this whole thing over again. So he's got some very unique styles when it comes to his persona and Viking stuff like that. I follow him pretty religiously on what he's been working on, and he to me, I don't know him very well like everybody else does, but to me his style is very historically accurate for his persona. So we're going to leave it at that. And
Floki's been through like 8 different personas since I've known him, and every time he's done it, he's nailed it, including his fighting style that goes along with it. It's the amount of research that he does is just awe-inspiring and mind-blowing.
Absolutely. So with that, guys, thanks everybody for tuning in. And again, if you have any questions outside of the video for Duke Sean, you can find him on Facebook or even just do a quick YouTube search for some of his videos. I know I did that. And
my channel is under Duke Sean 01 on YouTube, and I'm Sean Oppenheimer on the Facebooks.
Yep. All right, guys, there you have it. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next one.
All right. Thanks, man.